Inconceivable!
Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug.
Welcome to the Cheap Seats and Stickman podcast.
Hello, welcome back. You know, I did a little song for you. Welcome back to Cheap Seats and the Stickman podcast. It's been too long. I am Jason Burgos. He is Jose Maldonado. Jose, what it do?
How ya doing, man? It's good to be back. You know, I like the little musical interlude you included there in the beginning, man. That's a nice little touch.
I mean, I do consider myself a song and dance man, so.
Oh, well, first and foremost, man. You know, being that this is the audio podcast, we can't see the...
Yeah. Oh, my God. It's straight up Timberlake over here. I'm just... ooh, you know, you can't see it, though. Too bad.
Bringing sexy back. Man.
Yeah, always, constantly. So today on our show... we have two main topics we're going to focus on. I think they're so fun and exciting to talk about. It's geek central kind of stuff. One, we're going to talk about the concept of more or the possibilities of other Batman animated films. If you haven't seen a lot of the Batman animated films, they are fantastic. We're going to cover some ideas of what could be the next one and maybe rumors of what are they going to be. Our other focus of the day will be focusing on Uproxx. In April of this year, released a top 50 ECW superstars of all time list, and we're just going to analyze that. And I mean, Jose, what do you think about this stuff we're going to talk about?
Oh, interesting stuff, man. I mean, you know, Batman, like you said, the animated Batman movies have been like top notch. Some of them have been better than others. Like I know that The Killing Joke came out not too long ago and kind of disappointed. But stuff like Under the Red Hood and, you know, the Dark Knight Returns series is just next level stuff. You know, as lacking as DC has been with the movie stuff, they've been on point with the animated stuff. So it should be good to get into some potential stories of our favorites that they might be able to touch on down the line.
Yeah, I mean, let's just get right into it now. If you haven't seen them, maybe you've seen some of them, some of the Batman animated films. Now, I mean, we can go all the way back to, you know, under the Mask of the Phantasm, which is just utter class. I saw that in the movies. Did you get to see that in the movies back in the day?
I did not. I caught up on that one later on, like
really?
on video, man. Just off of reputation. I missed out on that one, man.
Well, I was big ups to Maureen Burgos, my mother. She took me to go see that movie, and man, it was unbelievable. Because I was a diehard. I used to watch Batman after homework every day, and to go see the Batman animated film on the big screen, it was like mind-boggling. But we're going to talk more about the recent stuff, where now, because in our world today, you know, Marvel for the most part has been the winner in terms of the cinematic movies, you know, the real life ones. But DC has really dominated in the animated stuff, and some of the great Batman stuff have come out so far is like Jose just mentioned, Under the Red Hood. The top best one so far has probably been the Dark Knight Part 1 and 2. Did you get to see the Dark Knight Part 1 and 2 animated?
I did catch up with that, man, and it was awesome stuff. It really was.
I mean, and if you've read the comic, it so closely follows the comic. It's one of those movies where you're watching and go, oh, I remember what's coming up, and you're excited to see it. Some of the other ones,
yeah, for sure. Like even knowing the story doesn't detract from it.
Yeah. And another one is Year One. Year One's fantastic. There's been some so-so ones like Son of Batman and Batman vs. Robin. I forget which one. One of them covered the Court of Owls story, which is a fantastic story from the comics. If you haven't read it, you must. Some other ones are Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, which was pretty solid. And like Jose also mentioned, Batman The Killing Joke. Do you have any favorites that you liked out of that group that's come out so far?
I really loved Under the Red Hood. I thought that was really well done, and especially, I mean, we all know that Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy are legends, you know, Joker and Batman respectively. They didn't do the voices on that one, and it was still really well done. Like, you know, John DiMaggio did the Joker voice, and I thought he was awesome in the role. And I think they handled that one really well. That's probably my favorite one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. My favorite is probably The Dark Knight Part 1 and 2 because what's fascinating is for the old school fans out there, the guy who did the voice for Batman in Part 1 and Part 2 is the same guy, I forget his name, but he's the same guy that played RoboCop in the first two RoboCop movies. Like, so
Oh, yeah, was it Peter Weller?
Yes, Peter. Well, yeah, and with age, he's developed this much more gravelly kind of voice and everything. So he's actually really, really good. And they follow the comics so closely, even to the point where the gang that is running around in Gotham that follows the mutant Kingpin mutants, they say slice and dice and all those kinds of things. I loved it. That was my favorite. I mean, all of them are pretty good. Even the one that follows a Court of Owls, that is pretty good too. But Court of Owls was such a good story. I'm almost disappointed that they didn't just make a whole movie for it. Have you ever read any of the Court of Owls stuff?
I haven't, man. I missed out on that story, and I keep hearing nothing but great things about it, man.
Court of Owls is fantastic because it goes into the deeper history of Gotham, and you find out there was a secret society of the wealthy elite that were running pretty much a secret Illuminati-esque organization in the shadows and guiding Gotham on a certain pathway throughout history, and during this time to, bump off politicians and bureaucrats and other wealthy, influential types, they have a group of assassins called the Owls. And, the backstory of the Owls of, what their previous history was, what their capabilities are. And it's crazy high science in that they were able to, cryogenically freeze these guys way back in the day and, wake them and do missions. It's very Winter Soldier-esque, kind of stuff. And I mean, fantastic story, and the great hook of the whole entire thing is the owl is the natural predator of the bat. So you got that little
nice touch.
Yeah, and well done stuff. But I'm going to bring up some possibles. I mean, these are some of my favorites. Awesome. These are classic Batman stories. It's surprising almost some that haven't been done yet. The first one I'm going to bring up, see what your thoughts is. It's maybe one of the most epic moments in Batman history. Batman Death in the Family.
Oh, man. Yeah, everybody knows that story. Even if they don't know it by name, this is the famous one where fans actually got to vote on whether Jason Todd got to live or die.
Oh.
I'm assuming, you're talking about, yeah, I mean, that was 80s 800 numbers, man, if you could believe that, or 900 numbers.
Attention all Hotline fans.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, man, I mean, it's the famous one where Robin gets killed by the Joker, man, and Batman has to live with that. This was his Gwen Stacy moment, you know.
Yep. Yeah, his big loss. I mean, and it's what's crazy is that I recently read it for the first time. I heard about it for years. I read it within the year. I read it, and it's dated. It's that classic kind of 80s, early 90s writing where it's kind of hokey, and it would do well in like a reinventing for the modern day. Dialogue-wise, to make it a lot better than what, dialogue from a comic book in the 80s was like.
For sure. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's a little bit dated. One thing that surprised me about that, spoiler alert for any of the fans who haven't read it yet, is the manner in which Jason Todd gets killed, because they pull no punches. I mean, Joker beats him to death half to death with a crowbar, and then blows him up.
Yeah.
I mean, poor man.
It makes you
this wasn't
It makes you wonder if fans voting if he lives or die, if they knew that was the way he was going to live or die, would they have still made the choice? Or was he again, like for things that, if for young buckaroos that might be listening to this that don't know it, but I don't know, it's like he was not a well-liked character. Like the fans voted him to die, not because creatively this was to be a smart idea. No, they just didn't like the character so much.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy to think, man. I mean, of course, Dick Grayson is beloved, the first Robin, and Tim Drake has been just as beloved, since as the third Robin. But Jason Todd was just that bastard middle child, and for whatever reason, was not popular, just was not beloved. And man, did he bite it, and he bought it hard,
The next one I'm going to bring up is one of my favorite Batman stories, and it's written, I believe, I hope I'm not wrong here, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, by Jeff Leb, the same guy who's running the outstanding job Marvel TV is doing with all their shows. He's the head man for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all the fantastic stuff on Netflix. It's The Long Halloween.
Oof. Now, I'm going to be completely biased on this one. This is my favorite Batman story of all time. I mean, this is my number one. Even above like Year One and Dark Knight Returns. I mean, I know those are classic stories, but in terms of just sheer entertainment and my personal favorite story, this is the one for me.
Yeah, I mean, and for people that don't know The Long Halloween follows a story where that's what's great about this book and the next book I'm going to mention is Jeff Loeb does a perfect murder mystery story, and there's a murderer. He's bumping off, major figures in Gotham, and he's leaving like little, what would be the word? Like decorations or little trinkets related to certain Halloweens at that time. So there's an Easter murder, there's a Halloween murder, and it's a big whodunit on who the murderer is. Spoiler alert, if you don't know, the guy who does it all
avert your ears, please, cover.
is I wrote it down, Alberto Falcone, related, the son of the Falcone mob kingpin, and that's what it's like, a big, like, you got the Joker, you got the Riddler, you got everybody around, and it's Alberto Falcone, but the way it's done is so great. Fantastic story.
Yeah, absolutely well done. And it's funny because like you mentioned, Alberto Falcone was not the biggest character, so the big reveal was kind of out of left field, but it worked great within the context of the story.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's another spoiler, which I'm not sure we should even spoil here.
Spoil it,
do it. Do it. I'm doing it. Well, it leaves it open-ended to where it might have been Falcone for at least partial part of the murders. And the other reveal is Harvey Dent's wife, man, that she was the one that kind of saw what Harvey was trying to do and took it upon herself to actually commit some of these holiday murders. And at the end, you see her kind of burning the evidence and protecting Harvey's identity, man. It's some sick stuff.
Now,
but it's awesome. It kind of leaves you guessing.
Do you remember the follow-up story? Do you remember the title for the follow-up story?
Yeah, it was Dark Victory, wasn't it?
There you go. That's the next one. If you remember, please explain to anybody listening what Dark Victory is about.
Dark Victory is the follow-up. The details are kind of elude me at the moment, but it's kind of the origin story of Robin, intermixed with the follow-up to The Long Halloween. So you see Dick Grayson, you get a little bit of what happened with the circus, and him kind of coming into his own, and Batman accepting him as his sidekick, while the fallout from the whole holiday murders goes on in Gotham. So that's a real cool story to follow up on The Long Halloween. That could be another little two-parter there that they could go on. Yeah,
and this one, and in Dark Victory, it's the same kind of murder mystery. This time, instead of the holiday killer, it's the hangman, and instead of little trinkets or whatever from Halloween, from holidays, he's murdering people, major figures. Again, this person, whoever it is, and he's he's not stapling or stabbing. He's leaving letters on people, attach them with like the classic hangman game, where it has the hangman and the person hanging, and like the letters, you have to fill in the words. And it's this one I almost like more because of those little clues, and you're reading it and you're trying to figure out what the writer and the murderer's trying to do. And it's not normal to have such great back-to-back mini-series by someone, because there's so much hype going into a second one. It's easy to fall off, but like Jeff Loeb, this is why we know and see why he's in charge of the TV part of Marvel. That guy has a great mind for storytelling.
Yeah, for sure. Especially that kind of storytelling, like the whole whodunit kind of mystery kind of vibe, and it lends itself really well to Batman. So it's a lot of people didn't expect him to be such a great Batman writer, but if you think about it, it really does fit.
Yeah. Now, the next one I'm going to put on is, it's a bit of an outside one, a dark horse candidate. It probably won't be any of our choices, but I want to throw it in there because I liked it. There was a Batman comic that came out a bunch of years ago called Face to Face. Do you know this one, Jose?
Nah, not familiar with this one, no.
Face to Face, Batman has disappeared for a while, and at this point, Harvey Dent, formerly Two-Face because he's fixed his face, he has been handed the, not mantle of being Batman, but been handed the mantle of being the guardian of Gotham from Batman. Batman, it isn't really explained early on in the comic where he's gone, but he's gone away, and he's left Harvey as the vigilante in Gotham, and he's actually like a hero stopping crime and all this stuff. And as any great Harvey Dent story goes, he falls back into madness, and there's a fantastic scene where he mutilate his face to return his face to Harvey form, and it's fantastic, and just like the panels of the artwork. But that's another great one. You know, it's Batman. His entire history is filled of entire great stories. But moving on from that one, this is my favorite. This is the one I love the most. Batman Hush.
I figured you were going with this one when you brought up Jeff Loeb, man. This is a classic story.
And it came out, you know, we had reached a time in Batman where, you know, Batman was established, he was great, but there hadn't been one of those great miniseries or great story arcs in a while. You know, there was good stuff. There was, you know, Batman Nightfall, great stuff, or the one with the earthquake occurred in Gotham. Also, if you haven't read that one, the one with the earthquake, fantastic story too.
Oh, that was what, No Man's Land, right?
Yes, No Man's Land. I read the novel version, great. And in the novel version, little nugget, it has a map of the territories of Gotham because the major bad guys have broken the territories up, and you see, you know, Two-Face has a territory, Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze, the GCPD, and then this humongous swath of land is just all Joker because no one wants to mess with one man because he's crazy. But Hush is just unbelievable because it's one of those stories similar when I read it later, like Long Halloween, Dark Victory, that it just ties in the rogues. But while in those stories, the rogues were involved and doing their own things, this was a massive plot by one man tying in and using all the rogues in like this very masterful way. And also Jim Lee. Jim Lee does the artwork. The man many of us grew up on reading X-Men comics of his artwork. He does the artwork, and it's probably still to this day my favorite Batman artwork ever.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, quick little trivia tidbit, you know, a little personal trivia tidbit. This was the story that got me back in the comics, and you're the one responsible for it, man. I remember you handing me I remember you handing me the Hush, the hardcovers when they came out, and I checked them out, and all of a sudden I got, you know, Godfather Part 3 style. Just when I thought they was out, they pulled me back.
You're welcome.
Yes. So thank you very much for that, buddy. But yeah, Hush was the one that did it. You know, that's the mark of a good storytelling right there, man. That was such a great story, and you know, a great entry point for anybody who wants to refamiliarize themselves with Batman and its Rogues Gallery.
Yeah. Now, next one I'm going to talk about is similar to the name of the first one we talked about. I'm not sure if you've read this one. It's another recent Batman comic. It's Batman: Death of the Family. Did you ever get to check out Death of the Family?
Nah, I haven't caught up with this one yet.
Death of the Family is fantastic. For the people that will know it, you may know it from the ads regarding it, and it's Joker's face where he's wearing his own. It's Joker's face where he has his own face, kind of leather face style. I'm using a lot of faces here, but it's like sewed on, like his face. It's a long story, but in the comics, his face was skinned off by some other guy. You know, who cares? But he has gotten his face back, and he sewed it on. And throughout the comic, he's wearing a sewed-on version of his own face. It's creepy as all holy Moses. And in the story, his major plot, because he's been gone for a long time. Joker's been gone for so long that people actually are to the point where like they kind of maybe he is gone. You know, he disappears and then comes back. Maybe he is just gone. You know, and a lot of people like Jim Gordon are secretly hoping he's probably dead somewhere, and he comes back in grand fashion, and the big mystery is Joker seems to know the inner workings of the Bat family, where they are, possibly who they are, maybe the Batcave, and that's the thing. Does he really know? How does he know? And he gets so close, it's like so well written, and it's just, like I said, with the art for this face, it's so creepy. It's great.
Oh, man. I mean, yeah, Joker's the most famous Batman villain for a reason. So any story that revolves around him has a lot to live up to. And that one sounds like an awesome Joker tale right there, man.
Yeah, and it's done by, I mean, this is the guy who's reaching, the level of Jeff Leb and all these other guys in terms of influences, right? It's written by Scott Snyder. Scott Snyder has just had a sick run. Like his run on Batman, because he's done this, he's done Death of the Family. He did the follow-up, which I did not put on this list, called Endgame, which is another Joker-related thing where he finally has his face, surgically repaired and put on. And he's also done the Court of Owls. All major stories. Like his run on Batman is akin to Jeff Johns' run on Green Lantern. Like, just so many great moments, and just, like, not necessarily... Jeff Johns reinventing Green Lantern on a level that he brought, the colors of all these other rings involved and, and everything. This is not reinventing Batman, just putting him in a place where you really realize how amazing Batman tales can be told. But just unbelievable. The last one I'm going to bring up, another Dark Horse candidate, but I wanted to bring it up just because it was an interesting comic. It wasn't on the level of storytelling as the other ones, but I think it would be a great animated cartoon, and they can take it to another level, is Batman Battle for the Cowl that came out about 5 or 6 years ago. Do you know about this one?
No, I haven't heard of this one.
Battle for the Cowl is a story about, I think it takes place not after the recent reset of DC. It might be. I don't think it was after one of these big, major event comics that affected the entire universe. And a lot of it takes place like a year later. A lot of the superheroes have disappeared, and one of them being Batman. Batman's disappeared, and it's come to the point where Damian Wayne's already involved, and he's been Batman for a little, Robin for a short time, and Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne come to the point where they decide maybe there needs to be a new Batman. They can't, crime is getting out of control in Gotham because the bad guys are finally realizing maybe he's gone. So Dick Grayson, in an epic moment, finally takes on the mantle of Batman. And what happens is it causes a little bit of a schism because at this point, not Tim Drake, but Jason Todd's already back. And he's come, and this is before the recent stuff where he's Red Hood and is a good guy. It's when he's still bad, and he takes on a mantle of Batman with this amazingly drawn suit, and he's using guns. So there's that. There's other people that kind of want to fill the void and the vacuum left by him. So it's this great story of who's going to be the Batman, who deserves to be it. And it's the dichotomy between different styles because Dick Grayson wants to continue on the ways and ideology, while, of course, Jason Todd, a much more violent person, wants to do a much more hard-edged, violent version of Batman. I think in the animated movies can really take that idea and that scope over a 2-hour flick and really be really cool stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. By the way you're describing it, that sounds like it lends itself really well to an animated story, be action packed, and you get a lot of Batman, characters involved, like you mentioned, Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, where it's kind of like an all-star game of the Batman family, kind of battling for the mantle. That would be a really cool one.
Yeah, I mean, and here's hoping. I'm sure some DC animated execs are listening to us right now and just
we know you are.
Down.
We know you are. Come
They're
out the woodwork
noting
now.
it down. I can hear the scribbling right now. They're just taking ideas. Please don't listen to Jose. Long Halloween can wait. Hush, hush, please.
Hey, listen, man. Don't listen to this crazy person on the other end here, man. Long Halloween takes top priority. It takes precedence. Come on, let's see it.
Now, I think you should take the lead on our next topic today because you have the gritty knowledge of it. You've investigated, researched heavily. Take us into our next ECW-themed segment of the show, please.
Oh, yes. Well, don't thank you for the intro. Don't mind if I do. Now, anybody who's a wrestling fan in the 90s to the early 2000s remembers ECW, man. And I'm not talking about ECW. Yes. And you still hear the chants in the crowds from time to time. And I'm not talking about the ECW relaunch that WWE attempted and failed in the mid-2000s. I'm talking about Extreme Championship Wrestling in its original form, headed by the mad genius himself, Paul Heyman.
Yes.
And the incredible wrestling that came out of there, man. I mean, at a time where WWE and WCW were fighting for wrestling supremacy, this little rinky-dink company operating out of a bingo hall in Philadelphia was probably putting on the best wrestling product on the planet. And it really, out of that came a whole bunch of this legit cast of characters that has lived on in infamy. And, not so long ago, like you mentioned in April, Uproxx did a list of the 50 greatest ECW wrestlers of all time. And a lot of those stood out. And it really does, bring back some great memories of that time, and Paul Heyman himself has said that, he'd love to leave ECW in the past. It was what it was, and there'll never be another thing like it. And that's the truth. There'll never be another ECW. But looking back fondly upon it, there's a lot of great wrestlers that some of them are still around today, and actually got their start in ECW that it bears mentioning on the show, man. So, what do you say we get into it, man? What you think?
Yeah, what do you want to do first? Do you just want to give the top 10, or do you want to go back to somewhat save the top 10 for the end? What do you think?
Yeah, we could touch on some bullet points. We're not going to go over the whole 50 here. We're going to spare y'all that. If y'all want to look at the article, it's on Uproxx. It's a really well-written article. You got the 50 on there. You don't got to click next 49 times, which we really appreciate that, like some other lists. But some quick bullet points on this, man. You want to talk about some names that passed through ECW before they really broke out and became megastars. You want to talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin. Fresh off his stint in WCW, where he was famously fired by FedEx, gave Paul Heyman the call. The famous legendary story about getting his walking papers via FedEx package.
He wasn't the only one. That's happened to other people too.
Oh yeah, Chris Jericho just admitted on his podcast that he actually got a FedEx package from WCW with nothing in it.
Oh,
that's how great
God.
WCW was being run at the time.
Oh,
that company was running on all cylinders, man. But yeah. Austin, fresh off his stint in WCW, passed through ECW. He was only there for a cup of coffee, but while he was there, he cut a couple of legendary promos that kind of showed shades of what would become the Stone Cold character that became one of the biggest stars in wrestling history in WWE. So he's obviously on the list. He was number 26 on the list.
Wow, that's
another
amazing.
Dude,
26 for, was he even there a year? It was like a year he was only there, something like that, right?
Yeah, barely a year. I don't even think he hit a year. He was there a few months, maybe 6 to 8 months. Had a little feud with Mikey Whipwreck, where Mikey Whipwreck actually got a victory over Steve Austin, if you could believe that. So he could, that's a feather he could put in his cap. But yeah, Austin was only there for a little bit. Number 26 on the list is probably why he was only at 26, because he wasn't there that long.
I mean, it's still impressive considering all the other people involved. I mean, and the other crazy thing is that, I've watched so many documentaries on ECW. I remember Paul Heyman, I believe, wanted to make him the champion, wanted to put a title on him, and he didn't want to. He kind of wanted to keep this whole thing of he would come up short every time, and he seemed like the guy that's made to be champion. He just wouldn't do it every time. And again, showing his the creativity early of Stone Cold Steve Austin, and seeing a vision for a character, and making it work long term.
Yeah, for sure. Austin had that insight, that had those instincts right from the start. And yeah, you're right on that. Paul Heyman had big plans for him. He wanted to kind of just step back and work on improving his game, and it paid off dividends, because when he had left ECW for WWE, the rest is history. We know what he became. So. Yep. Another big name that kind of did the same thing was a dude named Cactus Jack, man. Yeah. And Mick Foley himself, man. He's number 24 on this list. Another one who wasn't in ECW for very long, but while he was there, again, showed shades of the promo skills that he was capable of. He didn't really get to cut that many when he was in WCW before that. You notice a theme here. A lot of WCW cast-offs kind of passed through ECW, honed their skills, and blew up in WWE. So.
Yeah.
That's another thing where ECW was kind of the breeding ground, where, for obvious reasons, financial or just, size and scope, they couldn't hold on to their big stars for long. But while they were there, they really made an impact and really showed what they were capable of, and caught the eye of some of the bigger companies, whether they went to WCW. Yeah. Some cats like Lance Storm, who was number 15 on this list, went on to bigger things in WCW, and some cats like Austin and Cactus Jack, or Tajiri, who had a really good run in WWE. He was number 12 on this list.
Do you feel Lance Storm really went on to bigger and better in WCW? I know he had titles and he did something crazy. He had 3 titles, but I almost feel like the ECW run was better. I know he wouldn't have as many titles, but as a character, he just became weird in WCW. He became this whole Canada thing, and after a certain point, it fell flat for me.
I feel you, but you know what? I really loved the whole Canada gimmick in WCW, especially the heel aspect of it. The whole speech of if I can be serious for a moment, he got that over. Yeah. And there was a moment where he was the U.S. champ, and the mess that WCW was towards the end. Lance Storm was a shining light on that program. Yeah. His wrestling skills and what he was doing there. So I think he went on to bigger and bigger things. But the argument could be made that he was better off in ECW. I feel that.
Yeah, no, I get your point. You're right. Didn't at one point he had 3 titles at once? Wasn't he a U.S. champ, cruiserweight champ, and then they had like that weird version of their hardcore title. Did he have like 3 at once, something crazy like that?
Something like that. I think he had the TV and the US. The cruiserweight he handed off to like primetime Elix Skipper when he was a thing.
Oh wow! Name drop, holy moly!
Talking about going way back to the way back, but yeah, there was a point in time where I think Canada had like if not all the title, they didn't have the world title, but they had like I think the tag team and the cruiserweight and the hardcore in the US. They had a nice little run there going on. It was almost like Raven's Flock revisited.
Sorry, yeah.
But
who else, some other names on the interesting list, not in the top 10.
Oh yeah, I mean you're talking about some other big names there. Chris Jericho passed through ECW. He was number 31 on the list. A hard one to rank, but had to be said, was Chris Benoit. He was number 20 on the list. Yeah. And 2 rivals that had arguably what's considered, if you ask Joey Styles, he called this the greatest match in ECW history. Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko. The 2 out of 3 falls match. Guerrero was number 14 and Malenko number 13. Their send-off match before they each went to WCW is considered maybe the best technically sound match in ECW history. And if you go back and watch it, it totally holds up. It's a classic match. It really is.
Yeah, and the top 10, when you go through it, it's names you expect there. And as I'm going through it, I'm like looking at some of the guys just outside the top 10 and how influential. Like you mentioned a couple of them, like Dean and Eddie. Like one name that you wouldn't figure to be in like a top 20, but when you watch these, he really was a key guy, Steve Corino. And that's the kind of uniqueness of like an ECW, that a guy like Steve Corino that probably really just would not work in WWE and WCW, like not a physically impressive figure, but that guy, he worked his way up from kind of comedy act and just in a bloody hail of effort, because he used to be busted open almost every match. He ended up becoming the ECW champion, and he had like a really cool clique where it was him. It was Rhino. He was a part of debuting Rhino. And he had, like, Tajiri as an enforcer, who Tajiri's at 12. Another guy that's unbelievable, like, was so amazing. And that was, again, another unique thing about ECW in that, you could have a guy that small, and in ECW, he's a killer. He wasn't like, oh, he's a cruiserweight. He's fast, and he'll get around. No, this guy is a nasty, lethal son of a gun. And, to the point he was so legitimate that he had a fight. He fought Taz for the ECW title. And, when you fought Taz for the ECW title, you were one of their more serious, players in that company.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. And, you hit it right on the head. That was one of the key ingredients that made ECW so special, is that a guy like old school Steve Corino can get over. He can be given the opportunity to get himself over. And, like you said, in any other company, he probably wouldn't have gotten as big, but in ECW, he was allowed to shine. And he was awesome. It broke my heart, the very last pay-per-view of ECW, that they really could have kept going on. And one of the big things that broke my heart was, you see him and Just Incredible kind of form together, like the new Impact players. Like they were like the Impact players with that tag team where it was Lance Storm and Just Incredible, but it was going to be Just Incredible and Steve Corino this time. And unfortunately, ECW going bankrupt. We never saw it come to fruition, but so it goes. WWE won the war and absorbed WCW and ECW. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
but focusing on the top 10. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the top 10 here. Starting off with number 10. Now, this is a team that, they were, of course, incredibly influential. Personally, I would have put somebody like Mike Awesome in the 10th spot, but there's no denying these. Yeah, honestly, Mike Awesome in his prime, his feud with Masato Tanaka was like the stuff of legend. And, obviously he became kind of a joke once he went to WCW, and unfortunately the dude kind of his career, his life came to a tragic end. But
I think it was that mullet haircut that just was terrible.
Yeah, oof.
That haircut worked in like the gyms and ballrooms of an ECW kind of card, but when it went to prime time and WCW television, it was like, God, this guy looks like somebody's dad on steroids. What the hell is this?
Oh yeah, but somebody that's 6'9" and can fly through the air like that, you're not gonna argue with the dude about his haircut, right? But yeah, no, I think Mike Awesome in his prime really deserved to be in the top 10, but who they put at the 10th spot was the Eliminators. This was Perry Saturn and John Cronus. three-time ECW Tag Team Champions, and they were a real formidable tag team. In a place that didn't, they had some good tag teams there. Like, they had New Jack and the Gangsters. They had the Pit Bulls, and of course, another team that we'll get to in a minute. But the Eliminators were really standouts in that they were, just kind of hardcore, aggressive style that fit ECW really well, and they were just, no-nonsense dudes that the crowd could really get behind. So I thought the Eliminators were really cool.
Yeah. I when I got into ECW, it was well past the Eliminators, but yeah, you always hear about them and see footage of their finisher and stuff like that, and how big a deal they were in establishing like the tag team division early on in ECW. Yeah, so I see why they're there. They're one of the more important ones in the history of ECW.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. And speaking of the history of ECW, number 9 was a vital cog in getting ECW over, just for the fact that he took his name value, which was substantial in the wrestling business, and applied it to this company.
Yep.
It was Terry Funk.
Yeah,
Terry Funk, the hardcore legend.
He was 60 back then.
Yeah, seriously, man. This dude was like 60 and busting out moonsaults. This dude was middle-aged and crazy.
Yeah, I mean, barbed wire matches with Mick Foley. Crazy bastard.
Good Lord, man. Anybody out there, go look up that Japanese death match between Terry Funk and Mick Foley if you really want to give yourself a cringe, man.
Oh, man.
Terry Funk, to his credit, man, no ego on this dude. This dude was willing to get in there, mix it up with the young dudes, and help put them on the map. You know what I mean? And he really lent a lot of credibility to ECW when they needed it. They were just getting started, and, the fact that Terry Funk was willing to give this company a chance really paid off for them, man. He was a really important part of that.
And for people that listen to this, they're like, Terry Funk, Terry Funk was a guy that when he did go to WWE, he wasn't really the Terry Funk that made him know. I mean, he's a guy back in the day, sort of like a Dusty Rhodes, who also kind of got a raw deal, or a Jerry Lawler, another guy who got a raw deal, that back in the days of the 80s, 70s, the territory time before WWF was just big enough, like this, he was the man. He was one of the biggest stars in the southern states, him and his brother, and he was a big deal. So what Jose's saying, it's really true. Like, for the diehards that were watching, or the people that knew of that time that were watching, and there was still a lot of them watching ECW in the 90s, Terry Funk being in there and doing the job to others was a big, big deal at that time.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. Former NWA heavyweight champion, reinventing himself from, the old school brawler and grappler to this hardcore icon. And it worked. Terry Funk, really important to ECW, man. Mm-hmm. And number 8 on the list is the other team that was really important to ECW success. And they're still around today, man, the Dudley Boys.
Yeah, the greatest team in ECW history in my book ever. For
sure, man. Was it 6-time ECW tag team champions? I believe it was. Might have been more. My numbers might be off here, but you talk about Steve Corino starting off as a comedy act and getting himself over. The Dudleys were a legit comedy act. You had Sign Guy Dudley, you had Big Dick Dudley, you had Dance Dudley. This was a comedy gimmick, but Bubba Ray and Devon just worked so well together and got so over that you couldn't help but take them seriously and became legit badasses en route to becoming, like you said, the best ECW tag team of all time, and maybe one of the greatest tag teams in wrestling history. Period.
Yeah, I remember when I first really got into ECW, it was when they were really at the height of their tag team powers. And it used to be chaos, their matches. It was just like, I didn't get my brain as a WWF watching fan. Like, you have your regular tag team matches in the ring, they're in the corner holding the rope, cheering their guy. These matches used to go all over the arena, especially when they fought Balls Mahoney and Spike. Like, people were going through tables, people were bleeding. Like, they were wild, man. I think there was even I don't know if it was a pay-per-view or maybe it's an opener of a pay-per-view, but I think they both had to face Taz, which was, again, insanity. Like, they were, like, groundbreaking because, and we all know about their time at WWE when they were groundbreaking and all this stuff. But, yeah, they were just, like, when the Dudleys came out, I was like, uh-oh, hell's about to break loose, when they did that.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. And with all due respect to the Road Warriors, LOD, and the Doomsday Device, for my money, the 3D, the Dudley Death Drop, greatest tag team finishing maneuver of all time.
I completely, it's like the Doomsday Device is great. For its time, it is fantastic because that was a time where people falling from heights was like, whoa! Now
for sure.
We live in an age where people are jumping off of hells in the cells, so it's a perfect mix of movement, tag team, the timing, because that thing is not easy to do. The timing for that could be so easily thrown off, and so, if the timing for that is thrown off, someone can get hurt. Someone will be embarrassed, and the timing is fantastic. And it's also the unique kind of move that seamlessly blends into a hardcore move where it can put people through tables and all kinds of other nonsense, or even flaming tables. So I agree with you 1,000%. Like, I can't really think of a tag team move. Like, the Eliminators move is great, but this move was just, it's when they know it's coming, everybody gets up and starts saying 3D. Like, it's amazing. I love that move.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. When like you said, when they nail it, the right way, it's perfection, and the crowd just can't help but get on their feet.
Yeah.
So number 7 on the list, Mr. ECW himself, Tommy Dreamer, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about he was to ECW what Sting was to WCW, what John Cena has been to WWE. He was the guy that kind of put it on his shoulders and was always there from day one to the very end. You could always count on Tommy.
Really?
He's another.
I would put the number 1 guy when we get to him. I would put him more in their vein. Tommy was a weird guy in that he was never like the main event. Like, he was in big stories, but he wasn't like the main event guy. It's hard. Like, I completely get what you're saying. Like, he's like staying power, but he was never the marquee. Like, he's almost to me like who can. Like Dolph Ziggler, sort of. Like, he's a guy that he's always there. You can always rely. He's kind of like, I know, he's a weird comparison and that was what was so unique about it. He didn't want to be the main guy. He didn't want to be the champion, but he was always there, and he was in key stories, just not the main event stories. So weird, his history there.
No, you're right on that, and and you're right. It was by design. Tommy, by his own admission, never wanted to get himself, to the top. Like, he reluctantly won the ECW title.
Yeah.
And of course, it got taken off from the same match. But he in his by his own admission, he never wanted to touch the title.
Yeah.
But the thing about Dreamer, the thing that he has that most that these other cats on the top 10 don't, is that he never left. Even the dude that's at number 1, all the rest of the list here, they might have gone to another company and came back. This and that. Dreamer was there the whole time, and I think that's something to be commended. That's something that Paul, behind the scenes he was working with Paul, coming up with stories, things like that. So in that aspect, I think Dreamer was vital to ECW because he was like kind of the heartbeat. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you're probably right with the comparisons to Sting and everything. It's just when I think Sting, when I think Cena, I think championships, and he didn't have that. But yeah, he really was like the guy, like like that's what it is. Always about him, staying power. Like Derek Jeter so much. Like, Derek Jeter was great on the Yankees, but there was many times where he was not the best player or the most dangerous player on the team, but he was always there, and he was a key cog in the success that it was,
Yeah, you're right on that, man. And also, he was probably involved in the greatest feud in ECW history, arguably, because there's others on there that was really top notch, and we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. But his feud with the number 2 guy on the list that we'll get to in a second was the stuff of legend, man. Yeah, people still talk about it to this.
And the fact that there was this is a thing I miss in wrestling today that they don't have so much now, and is a big issue of debate in wrestling, internet community wrestling circles now, is the whole 50-50 storytelling. There was not 50-50 storytelling in that. His major feud with the number 2 guy, am I right? He never beat him, right?
No, not until the very end. Yeah. I mean, they dragged that out, and he could never get over on him. He was always chasing that until finally sweet victory. But yeah, it made for compelling storytelling. Yes. Tommy Dreamer was always the underdog you wanted to root for, even though he never quite got there. So Tommy had the crowd in the palm of his hand when he was in there, man. And it wasn't always that way. I mean, they hated him at first, but he really earned the crowd's respect, and that's a feather in the cap to Tommy.
Yeah.
All right. So number 6 on the list is not the greatest wrestler by any stretch.
What are you saying? This guy's a technician galore. This guy's like he puts Eddie Guerrero to shame. I mean, this guy's like he can twist you up with pistols. He's the man of probably 1,002 holds.
Man, the only thing he put to shame is the bar tab, man. This dude right here was brutal to watch in the ring. But you want to talk about the beauty of wrestling is that presentation can be everything, and that was definitely the case with our number 6, the Sandman.
Oh man.
I mean, this dude was not much to look at in the ring, but this dude was ECW personified, man.
Yes,
he was hardcore.
yes. That's what he was,
You know, he was
ECW.
brutal. Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, from the entrance, man. I mean, once Enter Sandman started kicking in, everybody knew what was coming, and it would take him pretty much the length of the song, and this is not a short song, to get to the ring. He would walk through the crowd, drinking beer, banging it on his head.
He'd beers before he even started wrestling.
For sure, man. This dude was smoking a freaking pack of Marlboros.
Yeah.
He'd be pouring beer on random dudes.
Yeah.
He'd be cut open before he even got to the ring, and then the match started.
If you have not seen the Sandman out there, if you thought Stone Cold was the first guy drinking alcohol during a match on major TV, it wasn't. He stole that. Let's be honest here. And 2, if you have never seen a Sandman entrance, it's insanity. It makes no sense. For one,
it really doesn't, man.
Again, another thing's WWE, the coming through the crowd like the Shield. Again, he did that first. Again, totally stole it from him. But he did that. He would drink the beer, like Jose said, pour it on people, and then smash it on his head. And here's another hack alert. This guy, when Goldberg used to smash his head on the locker before he came out, the concept of someone bleeding on their head before they came out, that was him too. This guy was an innovator of nonsense. It was amazing.
I mean, facts are facts, man. I mean, we got to be honest here. Dare we say the Sandman was a trailblazer?
Yes.
He was a trendsetter. You know what I mean? His style was unlike anything anybody had ever seen, and you see shades of it in Stone Cold. You see shades of it in Goldberg. You see shades of it in the Shield, man. And it's crazy. The Sandman was just that. I think for pure spectacle, the only one that could rival Sandman in ECW was New Jack.
Again,
who was
pure
also
insanity. And again, another guy like a trailblazer like Sandman. But once I think that's the one thing he has up on Sandman. When Sandman trailed the Blaze, and then he hit the ring, and the Blaze was out. It was, the fire was gone. And you wanted to end quickly and then go back. New Jack, at least when he came in, it was just pure insanity in the ring too. So that's what made him special.
Yeah, I don't remember New Jack ever doing an actual wrestling hold. I remember him smashing a keyboard over somebody's head and diving off the balcony. Yeah. But that's
all I'll
ECW.
say is cheese grater, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah, and that with freaking America's Most Wanted blaring over the entire match, which was just incredible, man. Oh God, I just ECW.
I miss that stuff.
I love ECW so much. I miss it so much, but. Moving right along here to number 5, and in my opinion, I mean, this is tough because the top 5 are pretty much interchangeable. They're all legends in ECW and all legends in the wrestling business. I would have had this dude maybe a little bit higher, but I understand why he's number 5. All things considered, he was kind of like The Rock, where he made a great impact while he was there, but he wasn't there the longest. You know what I mean? And that would be and that would be Taz.
Well, I mean, he was there a long time. He just wasn't champion a long time.
For sure. Like, he was there when ECW started. He was the Tasmaniac. Rocking that. Broke his neck and came back, reinvented as the human suplex machine, and became the most dominant ECW champion in ECW history. I mean, this dude was maybe 5'8", 5'9", and that's being generous. But the dude might as well have been 6'5" with the aura that surrounded the dude. Man, it really was a sight to see Taz in the ring.
And I think you said it perfectly with Sandman in terms of, presentation was great in terms of interest. His presentation was phenomenal in terms of the persona of the character and getting the character over as legitimately a physically imposing person, even though despite his size. Again, that's what made ECW amazing. In WWE, you've had smaller guys finally become top stars, but it's always about speed and athleticism, and like Shawn Michaels was unique in that he was the way he took bumps and his athleticism and his speed in the ring. Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, they had to do high flying to really get to the top. He was a small man who was not a high flyer at all. It was pure, it was like Brock Lesnar is now in a 5'8" form. And again, another kind of thing WWE's taken from ECW is this concept of a man who's just doing a lot of suplexes during a match. Taz did that, but unlike Brock, where it's all German suplexes, Taz did a plethora of suplexes, some of them unique to him, and just he was a force. He didn't go in there and the other guy gave him a tough match. He grinded it through. No, he would go there and wreck people, and that was amazing for the time. And the coming out in the towel that's kind of ripped, and the face, and also he was phenomenal in promos. If you have not seen his get out of my dojo promo, go look it up. It's filthy. It's what he calls out on people, and how he was a legitimate bad ASS package. Amazing character. I was a diehard. I was there in Madison Square Garden where he debuted in WWE. It was one of my favorite moments ever, and unfortunately that was the biggest moment for him. But his ECW legend forever. I mean, one of the best ever.
Oh yeah, man. Taz is a true legend, and really his best stuff was that prime time in ECW when he was champ. Do yourself as a favor. If you got the WWE Network, or even if you go on YouTube, man, look up some of his stuff. It really is amazing, man. And moving right along to number 4 here. Yeah, you want to talk about just like Terry Funk was vital to ECW getting established. This dude right here drew the line. He's the one that set it all off, and that was the franchise. Shane Douglas, man.
Yeah.
Won the NWA title. We're talking about the NWA heavyweight title.
Yes.
Held by cats like Ric Flair, Terry Funk, Dusty Rhodes, Harley Race, all the big names. He threw it onto the ground and declared himself the ECW champion.
Yeah.
And just like that, the spark was set, and the history was made. Man, Shane Douglas had the gall, the testicular fortitude, as Mick Foley and Vince McMahon would say, to put himself out there, because you're talking about spitting in the face of nearly a century worth of wrestling history, and he was willing to do it because he saw he had the foresight to know that change was needed, and he was at the forefront of it. So kudos to Shane Douglas for making that change, and not for nothing, he was a hell of a hand in the ring too, man. I mean, Shane Douglas was a really, really good wrestler who he was the total package. He really was.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know about the NWA title, and a lot of people listening to this might know, because the diehards, they're the ones going to care about ECW. I mean, that was the most prestigious title, in the country before WWE became, WWF and a big thing. And then even when WWF title with Hulk Hogan became a big deal, that was still the number 2 title, man. In the wrestling magazines, when Ric Flair had that was still a big thing. So him to do that, now at that point it was diminished, and there was starting to be, a lot of sectioning of the territories again, like it always was, but a little different. There wasn't as much unification, but I mean, when he did that, it was a monumental moment. It wasn't on a grand scale, but in the sport itself, that was a huge big deal. And also another thing that was a big deal about him, and I think they were one of the first like little factions. But what was the faction? Was it the triple threat that he had with Candido?
Triple threat, him, Chris Candido, and Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yeah, that was a big deal, man. I mean, there were factions in, all kinds of sports and stuff like that, but, they were a faction that they were really good, and they were, physical, and they could beat you up. I mean, they were a fun fact. That was one of the first great factions in ECW history. I mean, that was another part of his history that's a big deal and important, too.
Yeah, for sure, man. Bam Bam was the veteran who was the muscle. You had Candido, who was the hand in the ring, and then you had Shane as the mouthpiece, the centerpiece of it all. The ECW champ at the time. That was a legit crew right there. And Shane could carry himself really well. Shane Douglas, he always had a chip on his shoulder. If anybody knows Shane Douglas, he was always kind of bitter about how it went for him in WCW and in WWE, but in ECW, he made it work for him, man. So that's where he was at his best.
And what's so bad about the triple threat is 2 of the members, when they went to WWE, like that was the first time I ever saw them when they were their WWE runs, and it was terrible. They turned the franchise into the Dean, which was garbage. Yeah, he got to a few of the Razor Ramon, but it was terrible. And then they turned freaking Chris Candido and his girlfriend, his wife at the time, now became Sunny and Skip, and the Body Donnas. It was just, they took these talented men who were badasses in ECW and just made them just such ridiculous characters, and it just for any fan, like a bad taste in their mouth. I can imagine the fans that were watching them and then saw them go to WWE must have been like, what is going on? But yes, please move on to the number 3, because the top 3 is amazing, but the number 3 is an all-timer for me.
Number 3 is an all-timer, one of my favorites of all time, Mr. Monday Night, Rob Van Damn.
Yes.
You want to talk about? Here's a crazy fact right off the bat for Rob Van Dam. He was never, during ECW's original run, the world champion.
Yes.
Yet he was probably the most over dude on the card.
Yeah.
That's how amazing Rob Van Dam was. 2 years he held the television title, made that as big as like when John Cena did the U.S. Open Challenge.
Yeah.
Rob Van Dam was must-see TV. His matches were off the charts. His athleticism, his moveset, his charisma. You know, people were just dying to see more of this cat, to the point where WWE kind of called on him for that little mini ECW invasion back in like 97-ish, where he feuded with Jerry Lawler and everything like that. He was at the forefront of that, just because RVD was that awesome.
He was also at the forefront of the second invasion.
Yeah, for sure. You know, when ECW got relaunched, the second One Night Stand, which actually the original One Night Stand was actually.
Do you remember when WCW invaded and then ECW invaded too, and they were paired up together versus WWE? He was the guy.
I'm sorry, you're right.
In his debut match, and I think it was No Mercy too, which I think just passed too. I believe it was No Mercy. He goes in and faces Jeff Hardy, the idol looks, the girls love, one of the young up and coming stars in WWE, and that just shows you the respect WWE even had for him. He goes in his debut match, Jeff Hardy wrecks Jeff Hardy, and I think he might have became Intercontinental Champion too, or something like that. But he was like, everybody knew Rob Van Dam. Like, even if you only watch ECW a little bit, Rob Van Dam was a guy, you know. I mean, he was like a LeBron James level freakish athlete, one of a kind, amazing. Like the athleticism of a cruiserweight in the body of, like, you know, a main event, you know, good sized guy, just unbelievable. I still I'm amazed at, you know, even what he can do now.
Yeah, that was the big thing about RVD. You hit it right there. Is that, you know, he had the size. He was about 6'1", 235, but could fly all over the ring better than most cats half his size. You know, I mean, he could keep up with the Mysterios, with the Guerreros, all these cats, man. His 5-star frog splash is only rivaled by Eddie Guerrero in terms of like the best in the business, man. The split-legged moonsault and just the innovation too. You're talking about the Van Daminator, the Van Terminator.
Yeah.
He turned hardcore wrestling into an art, man.
Yeah.
You know, watch.
Oh, you said it
really,
beautifully.
really something.
Beautifully. That it really was. I mean, I love Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero is my favorite ever. I love his frog splash. I love RVD's frog splash more because it's the kind of thing that he was insane. This is the kind of guy, and I know for a layman fan it's not a big deal, but to jump up in the air far and then change your direction and land the move, that is not easy stuff to do. And he would almost jump like halfway across the ring for this kind of stuff. Like, like just freakish. And like, yeah, the Van Daminator, again, at that time, one of the coolest moves you can ever see in any promotion in the sport. And it was great because it was an ECW exclusive. You could not do that in WCW, ECW, just because it had to be a hardcore match, and it wasn't saying this, like the usage of throwing a chair at somebody, making them catch it, bam, hitting them with it. I mean, just unbelievable. And also the Rolling Thunder. The Rolling Thunder was so cool.
Seriously, man. You know, pretty much any RVD match was just a spectacle because you never knew what he was going to bust out, man.
He would talk trash. He was a good guy, but and we can't forget him having Bill Alfonso doing his stupid whistle, yelling. I mean, this guy was the good guy, but he was so conceited and cocky. Like, he'd hit you with the move, stop, hit the 2 thumbs on the shoulders, and you're like, I love this guy. He's amazing.
Yeah, the perfect example of, you know, talking the talk and then backing it up, man. RVD cannot be denied. You know, the crowd just loved the guy. He was just incredible, one of the best ever.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting to the top 2. Number 2, probably the best character ever to come out of ECW.
The most psychological character, maybe, like, for sure the decade and probably the last 20 years, but in that company, the best.
Yeah, and some of the best promos you'll ever hear. We're talking about, of course, Raven. Raven, this is the dude who was Johnny Polo in WWF.
Yeah.
Scott Flamingo in WCW.
Yeah. Aiken in WDDP, you know, a guy that was just pushed to the side and like became a star despite being a one-time manager.
Yeah, for sure. I remember the first time I laid eyes on him in ECW, I was like, wait, that's Scotty Flamingo. Why is he wearing a leather jacket? And then I heard the man talk, and I'm like, this is the most awesome thing ever. Raven, that he was a product of ECW. Paul Heyman just let him do his thing. And he reinvented himself and became one of the most iconic characters in wrestling, man. Raven, his flock, his charisma, the way he would control people was just awesome, man. Raven was an ECW original by all accounts,
One of a kind. I mean, it could be, you can try to copy it, but it'll never be the same. Like, it just, his whole entry, and what was great about him, and I'm sure there might have been somebody that did in the past, but his very I don't care attitude in a sport which has gotten so tired, but everybody's coming out, clapping hands, smiling, or you're either doing a mean face, or you're trying to look like the baddest man on the planet. Like, either one of those things are a constant in professional wrestling always. This guy was just like, I don't give a damn. I don't want to be here. I'm going to go sit down in the corner and wait for you to get ready, and then we're going to fight, and it's going to be chaos, and I'm just going to beat your ass. Like, I mean, it just so unique, wholly unique character, and it was just magic. It was one of those things, like a lot of guys, like even a Tommy Dreamer, a Sandman, even, the number one guy to a level, once it left the borders of ECW, it was not the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, he had some success in WCW, but like you said, it's not the same. Raven in ECW, he was almost like a Jake Roberts, where, most wrestling promos, they're yelling at you.
Yeah, great comparison.
He would just talk to you. He was always the smartest guy in the room.
Yes.
And it was just so cool to see. He had that great presentation about him that made him stand apart, man. And, Raven was just awesome. And, we touched upon it a little bit earlier. His feud with Tommy Dreamer, maybe the best feud ECW ever produced. And like you said, it was because Dreamer just could never get over on Raven, man. They fought for years and years. And finally, when Dreamer got over on him, that was the emotional payoff. But Raven was always one step ahead, and the story that they built throughout that time was just it was incredible storytelling, man. It really was.
Yeah. I mean, you said it perfect. I couldn't even answer. He was just one of a kind, unique, special ECW only kind of character.
Yeah. Well, the number one dude, if you want to talk about what ECW was all about, it was the genocidal, suicidal, homicidal Sabu.
Oh man.
You want to talk about a spectacle, man. Sabu had it all. He had like the high flying maneuvers of RVD, the hardcore style of like a Sandman. The dude never said a word.
He said nothing. Did he even speak? He never spoke in his entire time, right?
No, I don't think he said an entire word throughout his entire ECW run. And he was still just incredibly over, man. Why? Because Sabu was out of his mind.
Yes.
This dude was crazy. And you just look at his body. You can see all the stuff that he's put himself through, man. It was incredible to see. But, if you want to talk about Raven and Dreamer being maybe the best feud, I think the only one that stands as good as that, besides maybe RVD and Jerry Lynn, Sabu and Taz.
Yeah.
I mean, people were just, that was built up so well. It's something that I wish wrestling would do now.
Yeah.
To where Taz and Sabu kind of cross paths here and there. The fans wanted to see it, but they just kind of built to it and built to it and built to it to the point where they finally met in the ring. The crowd was ready to combust, man. It was like Hogan and Rock on a smaller scale, of course. Mm-hmm. But, that kind of anticipation to see these two collide, man. And, all this with Sabu barely, never saying a word. It was incredible to see, man.
And when you look at some of the other guys' top five, like, Taz as an example and Robin, if you match them up in terms of the physicality and the work they're doing in the ring, they're probably better than Sabu. Like Taz is more physically imposing and just amazing to watch, like this force of nature, while RVD is just like an athletically gifted superhero in there. What made Sabu so amazing is, like you said, like this guy just didn't care. Like and as a wrestling fan, like when you're really into wrestling and you get it and understand it, the appreciation of the danger of the game and what they're doing is what you really get. And that was a guy who put it all on the line for the entertainment of the fans. And the risks he took. This is a man who, you would never know he was injured. He probably had all kinds of ailments, and you would never know. I mean, this is a guy who glued a wound shut.
Yes, man.
He would just tape it up and go out there. Again, he was another one that it was look. And it wasn't like a look that was based off of a ring attire or lighting. No, this man destroyed his body so bad he had the scars to prove how much of a bad man he was. And it just, again, another guy who was accentuated like RVD because of Bill Alfonso, but like the whole pointing to the sky. And also what's also great about him is he was a character with an Arabic kind of tinge to it that wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't coming out swinging a flag, and every damn Arabic character, unfortunately, in wrestling is always a bad guy. He was one that wasn't. He was just a madman that happened to be that kind of background, and wholly unique. When he left, they said Vince McMahon was a fan of him, but when he got to by the time he got to WWE, he just wasn't himself, quite the same kind of guy. And he's a smaller guy, but once it left the borders, it wasn't the same. But inside that universe, that was ECW. The stuff he would do, you just didn't see it. It was like lucha libre meets hardcore, and that he would use ropes to do stuff, chairs to do stuff. Like when we talked about a couple of days ago, I think for most people, when you hear that, this is ECW, you watch the video and you hear the music, he's one of the first things that pops up in most people's head when they think ECW. And that's why you can debate him being one, but he deserves to be one. And like we also talked about, he's not like Sting. To me, he's not like Sting and Cena. He's like The Undertaker. The guy that did all the hardest stuff, only became the champion once or twice, but was a key guy, and he was like an event. Like Sabu, when a Sabu match, just like an Undertaker match, it was an event. It didn't even have to be the main event.
Very, very, very good analogy. He definitely was the Undertaker of the ECW, where, like you said, it was an event. The aura surrounding him, you never knew when he was going to pop up. Yeah. It didn't matter if it was for titles. He didn't need any titles, any feuds, nothing. You stick Sabu anywhere, and you're going to get, a pure spectacle, and the crowd ate it up. Sabu was just that kind of a once-in-a-lifetime talent. So,
and they have it. You can go find it, and it's in the Uproxx video. So if you, the story. So if you go to the Uproxx story and read it, I want to throw out attribution to the guy who wrote it is Dariel Figueroa. But in the video, in the story, you have a bunch of videos, and if you haven't seen it, go watch RVD and Sabu versus Hayabusa and Shinzaki. That's the one that's in all the ECW highlight reels, like the insanity. And Shinzaki, if you know, that's also what was it, Hakushi in WWE.
Yes.
Just go watch that match. It's just insanity. It's pure spectacle, and not like salmon spectacle of hardcore athleticism.
Yeah, for sure, man. He's in all the highlight reels, and for good reason. The Arabian guillotine, the triple moonsault. He would just bust out all kinds of things, man. Do yourself a favor. If you've heard about the original ECW, but haven't caught up with it and want to see what all the hoopla is about, go check it out, man. It's some of the best stuff, the most incredible stuff you'll ever see, and it's worth the price of admission for the WWE Network or YouTube or wherever you can get it, man. Just check it out.
Yeah, if you like NXT, trust me, you'll love ECW, because NXT is like a ancestor of what ECW in terms of small arena, just a unique environment. The fan interaction,
the rabid fan base, man.
It's just one of a kind. Like I've been a wrestling fan my entire life. I've been to a few shows. I haven't been to enough as I would like, but that would be one arena I'd be scared to go to. I wouldn't want to go to ECW arena or an ECW show, especially with like kids or something. I'm like, nah, I'll just watch it. It's a little too intense for me, but to watch on TV, just one of a kind.
Oh yeah, for sure. But ECW lives up to the hype, man. Go check that out. For sure.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun talking about this stuff. If you enjoy the show, please hit us up with comments and thoughts. You can find me on Twitter at Cheap Seats Chat. You can find Jose at Stickman Cinema, right? At Stickman Cinema.
Yep. At Stickman Cinema, that'd be me.
Yep. On Twitter. You can follow our YouTube channel where you can watch listen to all our videos and our audios. Just let us know if you like the show, and just keep listening. And it was fun talking about these two, comics and wrestling, two passions of mine.
Oh yeah, true loves of ours, man.
All right, so thanks
always
again.
Always fun to get caught up in this stuff.
Come back for more. I'm Jason Burgos. He's Jose Maldonado. Bye bye, everybody.
See you next time.